So let's get into the episode. Lucy, thank you. Why don't you start off by telling everyone a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Ellen. Thank you for having me. I am a dual registered nurse with a background in the NHS. I went into running nursing homes from 6 years into my nursing career. I was the youngest home manager for Four Seasons Healthcare when I first became a home manager. I got into turning around homes. I found that I had a skill for the financial side and quite enjoyed the strategy of looking at failing homes. I worked with a company called Gold Care Future Management for some time, which specialised in working with homes that were struggling. Picked up a lot of skills there and then progressed to setting up my own consultancy, which grew and grew. So now I employ a group of consultants that do a lot of what I did on my own in the first place. So we now support care homes that are struggling, that maybe have a notice of proposal to remove their registration or a notice of decision. We do mock CQC inspections, due diligence reviews, and we also support people with certain projects, so staffing level, cost analysis projects and other things that hopefully will help them be a bit more financially stable or improve the quality of their service.
Excellent, great. So what other scenarios is you're coming across when a care home is might come to you, or is forced to come to you, or generally is about to fail? What the kind of scenarios are you coming across?
So hopefully care homes will come to us before they get to a dire kind of need and they need a consultant, or they need someone to turn them around in that circumstance. So unfortunately, a lot of the work we get is when someone gets an inadequate or requires improvement inspection, which has come out of the blue. It's a bit of a shock, and they will ring us and ask us for some support with the challenges or provide their manager some coaching, etc., to help sort that situation out. We do get a lot of providers that will ring us when they've noticed that they've had a high turnover of managers. The manager is the key person in a care home or in any service, and if there's two edges to that sword. If you have a manager for too long and they've become a bit long in the tooth, set in their ways, not kept up to date with regulations, then they might start failing, and sometimes owners notice that. Also on the other foot, if you have a high turnover of staff for a variety of reasons, you might find it difficult to hold on to a manager, and in those circumstances getting consistency and continuation of care can often fall through, and that obviously has an impact on the quality. And normally the first time that's really noticed is when occupancy drops. I know you're an expert in occupancy and sorting that out. But yeah, that tends to be the few different remits that people will come to us, hopefully before it's really needed.
I see. Interesting. And this the high turnover of managers is something that interests me. Tell me why is that likely to be the case?
There's lots of different ways that managers become disengaged. The most common ones that I think we see relate to the finances of the home. So it might be a lack of investment. It might be that the salary hasn't improved in line with the manager's expectations. A lot of the time it's due to issues with the culture and lots of whistleblowing staff. Lots of incidents, accidents, problems, and all of those things mean a lot of investigations and issues that the manager has to deal with. So if they don't have a huge amount of support from the owner of the home or the operations team that might be available, it can lead to the manager, losing kind of the love for the work and then deciding to move on and look for another job somewhere else.
Got it. So this is something that's emanating from the owners. Would that be fair to say?
In a lot of cases, I mean, sometimes it's not a financial issue. Sometimes it is, recruitment issues. If the home hasn't recruited staff properly, or if they've recruited the wrong staff. And sometimes organisations make the mistake that the manager isn't involved in some of the recruiting. And if they have a lot of staff that aren't to the right standard, or they're not trained, or they're not qualified, that can make it a bit more difficult for a manager to run the service and organise it. Managers these days need to be really good business managers, and they need a lot of training and support in those those senses as well. So being a manager is a really difficult job, and finding a good one at the moment is like finding hen's teeth. So yeah, it's quite important to keep hold of them.
Additionally hard, sure, I understand. And tell me about, just focusing on the owner's side, what you're seeing that might be leading to a care home, you know, fading as we've just described it. Is it that they don't, how would you describe it? Is it they don't know how to do it, they are negligent, or they don't have the appropriate attitude, or they have the right attitude, they just don't know, or they just need to learn fast and moving to a sector perhaps they're not familiar with, or, you know, like what are the kinds of things that you know, you're spotting?
That's a really interesting question, because I did a master's in leadership and management based on qualifications that owners and managers have. My dissertation went into the percentage of owners that have a qualification that means that they could run the care home that they own. And back then it was around 2017. The figure that I had was around 15% of all owners of care homes have the qualification that they would have the level 5 to be able to run a service, or the equivalent RMA, or the level 4 that it used to be called. So in a lot of instances, it's the ability to know how to run their business themselves. So they rely quite heavily on their manager. And in those instances, sometimes the manager isn't as good as they think they are, and they're relying on someone that doesn't necessarily have those skills. There are also owners that fell into it. So they may have inherited a care home, or they have it's in the family, and they've suddenly moved sideways and ended up running a care home that they haven't necessarily intended on doing, and they think it's quite easy because they've seen it being done, and they don't really know the intricacies of running a care home. And also, back when I first started in this industry, a lot of people were builders that built a care home. It was quite easy to do. The regulations were a lot easier. They've been running a care home, making a lot of money for quite a while, and then one day realizing that actually it's a lot harder and they don't meet the requirements, and they now suddenly need to learn about the sector that they weren't really that involved in the first place. So there's quite a few different reasons, and also in the work that we tend to do, we also come across people that have the wrong intentions as well. So people that want to take money out of the care homes, and unfortunately that gives a much negative impact on the care sector, you know, like in the news, where you have providers removing assets from the homes, or using the finances from one home to support another home, or to fund their lifestyles, which, you know, most care homes are struggling at the moment with fees that they have. So, you know, the media picture is quite a negative one of those providers.
Yeah, and tell me about the wrong intentions. What do you see on that? Do you see that if people have the wrong intentions, which, correct me if I'm right or wrong here, it's about not ultimately trying to provide great care, but looking at it as an asset, a financial asset from which the priority is to draw money from. And I guess, you know, this balance between care, and, you know, we can come on to that, and drawing money from as a business, where does it lie in terms of the long run? If you have, you know, I guess there's shades of grey on what wrong intentions may be and the effects it has as providing a good care service. Well, in the long run, can where I guess the question I'm asking here is if you've got the wrong intentions, is ultimately in the long run you are going to fail.
More than likely, yes. If they're a provider that is coming into care to make money, then they're probably looking at the wrong sector. It's one of the most risky sectors to get into. It's difficult to do. It's difficult to do well, let alone you know, do just to be able to get money out of it. However, some larger care homes that do make more money are used for financial gain for people, and also sometimes it's seen to be something that you can quite easily get into. And unfortunately, there are still ways to get around the registration issues with CQC. So, for example, somebody who would be refused registration as a provider can find someone else that will do that for them. Or they, have other ways of investing in the care homes, and such as the recent issues where we've seen certain organizations popping up whereby sections of the freehold of a care home have been sold, where in a kind of Ponzi scheme whereby a certain return is promised, which is not feasible, and then people will buy sections of the freehold, and then that's a difficult mess to sort out. And obviously our aim is that people don't get moved out of care homes. We don't want them to close. We don't want communities to lose those assets, and we don't want staff to lose their jobs. So, where we can, it'd be great if we could stop those kind of things happening and people being used in that sense.
And do you get providers coming to you who are in that situation?
We do a lot of work with various stakeholders. So we will often be brought in to give our opinion on certain services. So, for example, we have carried out investigations with the Charity Commission, for example, where charity-run services haven't worked so well, and they're not sure where the money has gone. So we are approached by different stakeholders all over the place, depending on the issue that they have. So we have been brought in on those services. We're also brought in where people want to be outstanding and they want us to help give them an action plan to do that as well. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of the wrong side as well as the right side, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I see. And tell me, so we've highlighted some of the areas that might be red flags. High turnover of managers. You mentioned the occupancy, of course, a high turnover of staff, and then the effect it has on CQC requires improvement, inadequate, etc. Out of everything you've seen, what's for anyone listening, is that if they are looking in on themselves, what would you say is like, okay, to prevent you let's say you're good and you're going, you're in danger of going to, let's say, requires improvement or even lower, to prevent that from happening, what are the kinds of red flags I guess?
I would say there's two different categories of red flags. So there's the quality red flags and also financial ones. So some of the financial ones will affect the quality and vice versa. But you're looking at, in the quality sense, you'll be looking at people that are maybe losing weight. So you'll be monitoring, hopefully, the weight of the residents. Obviously, if you have a lot of people on end of life needs or end of life plans, they will be losing weight. But if you have people losing significant weight, gaining pressure sores, getting infections, if you're monitoring all of those things, you will see when the service isn't meeting certain quality requirements in that sense. With the financial side of things, you're looking at the occupancy, staffing levels, staffing costs, agency. Obviously, a high level of agency will tell you that they're not fully up to occupancy with their staffing requirements, and that will obviously have an impact on the quality because it's not the regular people that are coming in to look at the home. There are also other red flags that I would see at the extreme level, where you have people phoning up asking for bills to be paid. And a lot of the time the staff on the floor might see this, that there's people ringing asking to be paid, and it isn't just the same service, and there's a misunderstanding. It's lots of different companies maybe ringing asking to be paid. Late payment of wages is often something that will happen, and maybe it's more than one member of staff at the same time that doesn't get paid, rather than just an accident or incident with one person. And that can run through to things like supplies in the home being low, ordering from different sources because sources have been put on stop, so they haven't paid a bill for something, and therefore that supplier won't supply that certain food anymore, through to little things like when you have a care home service that has got hand pump dispensers in the bathroom, but the service no longer buys the refills for the hand pump. They're using the £1.99 or £1 dispensers that you can buy in Tesco because they're cheaper, for example. So lots of different ways that you could spot that a service isn't doing so well.
I see. Okay. That's interesting. Thank you. And then those kind of things are happening, red flags. Hopefully the care home can see them. And then what do they do from there?
That's a harder one because a lot of the time, care home providers don't realize that their service is failing until someone else tells them. And that might be their lender, it might be CQC, it might be the local authority, it might be their manager. So hopefully providers have listened and or they've seen some of these things and they're looking at it before it reaches the point where they get a push in the wrong direction. So for example, an inadequate CQC inspection or a notice of proposal or some sort of enforcement action. So if they're keeping an eye on things and they've got regular quality assurance, it would be good to have a second oversight of the service. So to have an operations manager or a quality monitoring team, especially if the service is part of a group, it's really useful to have a quality service team that can go in and audit things and keep an eye on the manager and the support that they have. And other than that, there are millions of care consultants and organizations that can go in and do that. We do that. There's lots of other people as well that will go out, like Fulcrum, for example, who I know do a lot of quality monitoring and inspections. And, we can do quarterly, 6-monthly or even monthly reviews of a service to let people know how they measure and whether they're improving, staying the same or getting worse. And these days people can't rely on a good rating from CQC because that may have happened 2 years ago.
Yeah, I got it.
And it takes 3-4 months, if that, for a service to plummet to a level that could be, inadequate. So it needs a close eye.
Obviously, the kind of consultancy that you offer and other organizations that you mentioned, considering that it's a care service that you are running, it's not a sweet shop. It's people's loved ones,
people's lives. And
I just just to have that regular third eye to come in, give you an honest opinion, can just, I imagine, tell me if I'm right or wrong here, save you some serious issues.
And it's something that will back you up as well. So if CQC haven't come out for a period of 2 years and you've had an inspection that tells you that everything is good, that doesn't detract from the fact that as a provider you should be evidence that you should understand your service and you should have an idea of what's going on and you should be close to it. But if you've had an external person come in and give you that report and you've met with those points that they pulled out and said these things can be improved, then you're demonstrating constant improvement. So now with the new methodology with CQC where there'll be a portal that you can upload this evidence, these things are great ideas that you can put up there and say, I've had this inspection, this is the action plan that's come out of it, this is what we're doing about it, and then obviously demonstrate with evidence that those improvements. And if CQC are not coming out, that's the evidence that they can use towards your next rating. So I think going forward it will be really important for people to have more evidence and paperwork to be able to provide for their ratings.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Now, a couple of final things. Firstly, is there anything we've covered up to now that, or is there anything we've not covered up to now that you think is important?
I think focusing on quality care is really important. And I know we've touched on it, but I'm very passionate to push out there that people need to know what's going on in their care homes. And, I'm more than happy to advise people on a pro bono basis if they've got some kind of problem and they want to, work out a solution for it, rather than burying their head in the sand and letting things get worse to the point where the quality of the care is affected. And therefore, residents don't get the treatment or the care that they should, and and that just is a self-perpetuating kind of cycle then. But yeah,
that's great. Thank you. And finally, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how can they best do that?
I'm on LinkedIn, so I often use that for contacting people, and my email address is lcorner@cornerstonecs.co.uk. So if anybody wants to send me an email or drop me a line, then I'll be more than happy to have a chat.
Great, perfect. Lucy, thank you so much for being a guest on the Care CEO Success Stories podcast.